Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hope Matrix podcast. Today is May 1st, the International Day of Hope. You guessed it, hope. And today we're going to do something really unique. We are going to move over to the Sam's Club home office where we got some studio time with Zoya Awan. She is the Director of Public Affairs for Walmart. And I had the pleasure and honor of having a chai chat with Zoya to talk about the International Day of Hope, what our aim is with the International Day of Hope, why hope is important, especially in the populations that she works with, and how we activate shining hope in our lives. So I am super excited for this. You know, if you missed last year, we did an event for an International Day of Hope, May 1st, and we had speakers, some amazing speakers, scientists, activists sharing their stories around hope. And so we do hope that you check them out. No pun intended there. But we are now going to move over to the studio where we join Zoya and we talk more about science, stories, and strategies for hope. Thanks for tuning into the Hope Matrix podcast.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to our Create Sparks Chai Chat in honor of International Day of Hope. And it's also the first day of AAPI Heritage Month. So happy AAPI Heritage Month and happy International Day of Hope. We're here. My name is Zoya Awan, and I'm a director of public affairs at Walmart. And we are here enjoying some chai, which in my culture, chai is something that we come together over to build trust, to build connection, to have conversation, and to share. So I'm really honored to be able to share this tradition here today with you today and to talk about, to create sparks of hope, of community, and just learn more about how we can continue to activate hope in our communities and beyond that. So wait, first I want to just ask you to tell us a little bit of who you are and what you do and everything like that, please.
Oh, thank you. And thanks so much for having me today, Zoya. It's really wonderful to be here. So my name is Kathryn Goetkze. I am Chief Hope Officer and CEO of the Shine Hope Company. And also I founded a nonprofit. It will be 20 years this summer. I can't believe it. Called IFRED, the International Foundation for Research and Education for Depression, which we actually rebranded to Hope a couple years ago. I'll share a little bit more why, but I'm also a representative at the United Nations for the World Federation for Mental Health. So we set the theme every year for October 10th, World Mental Health Day. In collaboration with the whole world, actually, we survey the whole world about what they want for the theme. And actually this year, I'm excited to share that the theme is workplace mental health. So something very relevant to the work that we all are doing around mental health.
Yeah, so let me tell you all a story. I met Kathryn. So in my job, I work with the disability community, managing Walmart's external partnerships and relationships, the disability community with Indigenous populations, as well as overarchingly emerging generations. And something that's very interesting in my role that I understand is that there is so many intersections in what's playing out in communities. And there is a mental health crisis, you could say, playing out in many of our diverse communities. And I was at a National Disability Employment Awareness Month event here at the Walmart's headquarters. By the way, we're at the Sam's Club home office studio right now. And we were here in Bentonville. She was speaking at our National Disability Employment Awareness Month event with our Enable Associate Resource Group. And I was immediately very drawn to the concept of hope as a positive way to think about how we handle and work with mental health. So can you tell us a little bit about why hope and what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thanks so much for the discussion. And it's so important. So I got to hope. Hopelessness is really the single consistent predictor of suicide. It's also the key symptom of anxiety and depression. And so I have lived experience myself. When I was 18, my dad died by suicide. And so I got pretty active in the mental health space. I started a brand. I did the first kind of nationwide cause marketing campaign for mental health, raised some money. and then was in a suicide prevention talk, and they were talking about suicide prevention as primarily 800 numbers and restricting access to means, which, you lock up your pesticides, your guns. And I knew that wasn't going to save me. I knew it wouldn't have saved my dad. So I wanted to get to the root cause. What causes suicide? And hopelessness across the literature is the single consistent predictor of suicide. And it's also the key predictor of violence. And so I really set out to figure out what is hopelessness and how do you get to hope? I'd been diagnosed with anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of these things. Fundamentally, hopelessness is a really key symptom in that. So I wanted to understand, how do we manage hopelessness? What is it? How do we manage it? And how do we get to hope? And so I set out to do that. And I created a program. I found out hope was measurable. So there's a hope scale that I believe...
Guys, hear that? We can measure our hope. I did it.
Yes, did you do it? Yes. And, it doesn't matter where you fall on the scale, really, because the key thing to know is that you can get better at hope. You can learn how to hope. And to me, unless we teach people how to hope, how do we get there? And it's about normalizing the conversation around hopelessness. When you break down hopelessness, it's emotional despair. So you feel sad or angry or frustrated or afraid and helpless to do anything about it. So it's really learning about whatever challenge you have in life. How do we manage our emotions in ways that are healthy so that we don't turn to things like addiction, or even violence. Violence, you feel it releases endorphins when you're violent. And if you're in despair, that would feel better than your current state. So it's about learning this and learning healthier behaviors that you can choose. So how do we manage those emotions in healthy ways? And then how do we get out of helplessness to action? So we teach goal setting, overcoming obstacles to goals, when we need to re-goal, all of these skills. So it's skills-based approach to hope.
Something that really resonated to me is what you talk about, managing your emotions in a healthy way. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I'm a very emotional being, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I spent a lot of my life thinking there was something wrong with that, or, having to hide it or run from it or not knowing how to express it. Yeah. And obviously there's very different kinds of emotions, but can you talk a little bit about that? Like how, and let's talk about like how we manage it. Because Kathryn,
yes.
in our journey of partnership, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's been really wonderful for me to learn how to manage my hope better, as well as find ways to shine it in other experiences and create sparks around it and things. But the emotions piece, I feel like, is really important for us to understand, because I know that we're very bright and yellow and popping here, but it's not always all bright and yellow and popping.
Yeah. And it's about learning how to embrace our emotions, right? When we feel sadness or angry or afraid, that's a normal part of life. And right now I feel like with youth, we're over-medicalizing those emotions. We're saying something's wrong with you. But actually, emotions are super normal. It's just how we learn how to manage them, and that we're taught how to manage them. So we use SHINE as a mnemonic for hope because we teach stress skills, happiness habits, inspired actions, nourishing networks, and how to eliminate challenges, which are thinking patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. But if we go back to stress skills.
So with like S for SHINE, we're now at stress skills.
Yeah. And this, to me, I think is the most important thing for hope, because you can do something. I mean, a lot of crimes are committed in less than 30 seconds of when they think it to when they do it. And we have a 90-second physiological response to stress. So when someone triggers you, if you're triggered in traffic or you get an email or, someone says something to you, we have this physiological flooding of adrenaline, of norepinephrine, these emotions that take us what we call into our downstairs brain. So we can't think clearly, we can't problem solve. I mean, I think in the stores we saw during COVID, our stress was so high that our stress response was even shorter. And there were so many outbursts. You see this on planes a lot, but that's because our stress is so elevated and we're not proactively managing that stress response. We're not doing the things we need to do to keep us healthy. So it's not about running from the emotions. It's about, if you're sad, what do you do when you're sad? And
what
that's
do you
a question
do when you're
for
sad?
you. Yeah. I cry, or I talk to
I love
someone.
crying.
I know. Here's to a good cry. I know. We don't think crying is good, but it's actually a great way to release. And yet, if you avoid crying, you kind of store that energy up, and then it comes out in bigger ways, unhealthier ways.
That's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. I go for hikes. I get
Ooh, I
out
love
in
hiking
nature.
too. Nature.
Yes, I do a 90-second pause. We have a little timer that you flip over and you take 90 seconds because that's how long it takes for those chemicals to go through your body. So, when you're triggered, 90 seconds is a very long time if you think about it. When you're really frustrated or
sometimes I'm like trying to restart my computer or phone and it's like,
yeah,
like,
and you just start
patient.
and then right, exactly. So we further activate that stress response when we do that. I used to get terrified about speaking. So then speaking in public, and now I do it all the time, but I used to get nervous and then I'd activate my stress response even more when I just really stop breathing. And when you stop breathing, you further activate that stress response and then it gets worse and worse and worse. It can develop into a panic attack. So I just learned to deep breathe, to feel my feet on the ground, to remember why I'm doing it. So these are all super.
Okay, so we got a few little tidbits of some hopeful stress skills, right? So
Yes.
90-second pause.
Yeah. Belly breathing, breathe deep into your belly, go out for a walk. If someone says something, instead of engaging with them and further escalating, go out for a walk, take a quick break. But again, 90 seconds. So, and when you're in that stress response, you don't think clearly. You don't do things you're not problem solving. You're not doing things that
How many of us have done things irrationally and then been like, oh, I didn't mean that or anything?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you lose perspective in those moments,
you don't have access to your thinking. You don't have clear thinking access. So it's a must. Like if we were all taking that 90-second pause when we were triggered, it would be a much more kind of peaceful place that we lived in, really.
Here's to peace and more peace in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Through, creating more hopefulness. And I understand how, that when we individuals are more grounded in their power and in their hope and feeling that, then that can create this reverberating ripple effect. Right?
Absolutely. And when you think about it, when we're triggered, it's normal to be angry. It's not a bad thing to be angry, but if you're acting out in that anger, it generally leads to really unhealthy. So anger, listen to your anger. What is your anger telling you? It's generally a sign of what you really, really care about. And so when you can reflect on that anger and get clear on it, and then think of action, but not act from that angry place. That can be a fuel for why you're here, what your purpose is on this planet, where you can make a difference.
Okay, so we talked about stress skills.
Yeah.
Now we're in the SHINE framework.
Yes. Happiness habits.
Let's talk about happiness habits.
Right.
So we got through all the emotions. We've cried it out. Now we get to be happy. What are we going to do?
Yeah. So when you think about it, stress is really the short term. Like, what do we do in kind of those moments that we're triggered? Happiness habits are about cultivating those long-term healthier. So it's going to be your sleep.
Who loves sleeping? Sleep. I could use a lot more sleep though.
Right? Well, it's important. It's super important. Nutrition, exercise. There's a lot of great research on exercise. Being a really effective way to release those endorphins just to feel good. I'm very diligent about my working out. I have to work out. Super important for my mental health and well-being. So practicing your strengths. So if you haven't taken the Strengths Finder, highly recommend you take the Strengths Finder. So
for anybody who doesn't know what the Strengths Finder is, can you tell us?
Yeah, it's a bit
Gallup,
long.
right?
Gallup has one, and then we use the VIA Strengths Finder. We have it on our website, a link out to take it, but it's a way to look at what are things that you're good at. We often focus on what we're not good at, but it's really important to learn about what you're good at and then practice those on a regular basis because those can cultivate positive emotions. Goal setting, checking off things off your box can be a happiness.
Oh yeah, I like putting things on my to-do list and then checking them off.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, some of my happiness habits that you've helped me to realize. Well, one of them, I love flowers so much. So bought me a lot, and I want us to talk about the sunflowers in a minute, but I have realized how much of a happiness habit that is for me. and how much it uplifts me and how I really enjoy when flowers are around. So that's one.
Yeah.
I also love to go shopping and my fashion and my dressing up and wearing things as part of my happiness habits, my accessories, my jewelry. I feel like I always used to do that, but I never really acknowledged it as a happiness habit.
Yeah.
And then when you started to tell me about it, and we've been on this journey of myself, again, understanding hope, but then also how we're thinking about partnering and within the communities, etc. It's been really fun for me to discover more and more happiness habits.
That's awesome. Yes, and the key is, I mean, some people use shopping to the excess. And
I know. She's like, girl, those are too crazy now. Be like happiness habit. I definitely have a little too many things.
Yeah, but that's awesome. Yeah, and it's super, I mean, colors have a big impact. It's
Okay, yeah,
why-
so then actually let's talk about the
okay.
sunflowers and like
Take a little
yellow.
river, yes. So yeah, that's actually why we picked. So we've been working on hope for many years, studying hope, teaching hope in different communities. But we picked the sunflower as the international symbol for hope because it's the color yellow. So Leah Terseisman, who's the director of the Pantone Institute, I studied under her for Pantone does color swatches. They study colors.
Interesting.
Yes. They do the Walmart, the PMS colors. So they're the company that does. It's fascinating. So she is the world's color guru. She predicts the color of the year every year. She's been a great mentor and advisor to me. So it's
knew that
amazing. Exactly. See all you learn in the chai chatting.
Yeah.
So we chose, and then I read a study that 100% of people have positive reactions to sunflowers, a study out of Rutgers. Really interesting. And I wanted to pick a symbol that people could raise money on. So you can plant sunflowers, you can sell sunflower seeds, you can do all kinds of things with sunflowers. But yeah, it's grows in darkness and, doesn't necessarily see the way, which is really, if you're in a depressive episode or you're struggling in life in any way, shape, or form, things can feel very dark. But it's about just keeping on moving kind of one step at a time and having that inner knowing and kind of guidance to keep going. Starts as a seed and then, it blooms into this beautiful flower and follows the sun. So it's heliotropic. So during the day it changes and that's really, it's about finding our light and following our light. And, it can be hard to shine hope at times. I mean, hope isn't necessarily, it's a simple construct. It's not necessarily easy, but it's a pathway to kind of get through things. And to me, sunflowers are super represent. And gardening is great for your mental health and well-being. Lots of positive research about gardening, which is pretty cool.
I've never gardened before, but like I said, I love flowers. So more flowers everywhere for everyone, please.
No, it's true. Yeah.
Okay, wait.
Yeah.
So we were going through the shine thing.
Yes.
Thanks for the little detour. Everyone
Right.
get flowers.
Yeah, and give flowers too.
And give flowers
Yeah.
and buy them for yourself too. I often buy them for myself.
Absolutely.
And that's about the knowing that I don't need to have someone else get them for me.
Right,
But it's a
yes.
joyful thing for myself. So
Absolutely.
okay. In the shine.
Yes. Inspired actions.
Inspired actions. Okay, tell us about inspired actions.
Not just actions, but inspired actions. One that when you're feeling, when you're in a good place and then you take action. But it's really about learning how, when you look at hopelessness, first of all, it's that despair and then helplessness. So managing your emotional despair, you use stress skills and happiness habits. And then how do you get out of helplessness? It's about goal setting, learning how to set goals, learning how to overcome obstacles to goals, knowing when you need to re-goal to a new goal. There's an interesting study on hope that if you envision what you want in your life and then a goal that you have, and then you envision yourself running into obstacles and then seeing yourself overcome that obstacle just by vision, just in your mind, and then going towards the goal, seeing another obstacle, overcoming it. Like if you wanted to run a marathon, what are the obstacles? How do I overcome them? And how do I keep going? Even if you don't run into those obstacles, you're more likely to overcome other obstacles and reach your goal. So it's about teaching all of these skills, why chunking down goals is so important, why we want to write down goals and then
I should write down some goals for myself.
And check in with someone regularly. I mean, it's so important. It's when you think about companies and how companies are.
What is that? We're getting to the end in a second. I want to say something about the I.
Yeah.
Because inspired action.
Yeah.
We're here doing a Create Sparks Chai Chat, and I want to just go in for a minute about what Create Sparks is, and so Walmart has Mr. Sam, who was our founder. We have his book here honoring him and all,
Yes.
He, back this, like our logo, the Walmart logo, which you can see here, has this spark on it. I don't know if everybody knows that's a spark, but it is a spark. And that spark represents the spark of inspiration that Mr. Sam had when he was starting the first Walmart store many years ago, 60 plus years ago. And that spark of inspiration, of course, and meant inspired action later, like look where we are now. I'm sure he could have never imagined. So Create Sparks is about going into communities and creating these sparks of action, of inspiration, and of connection, of community, knowing that is really what just ignites further it. So sometimes even for myself, I have to remind myself, because I can get very overwhelmed with thinking about all the possibilities and all the things I need to do all the time. But it's like step by step. And it's like each moment, if it's like just a spark, okay, today's spark was that we were going to have our chai today and we're going to continue to spark this conversation. And so I am grateful that we're creating sparks here and really understanding like what inspired action is about. So all of you out there in your community and how you're listening, I hope that you can take some sparks of nuggets from this and activate it in your own communities. And that's what this is about too, right? So we'll get into Nourishing Networks, but tell us a little bit about how we can activate it in our communities.
Yeah, well, we have a lot of ways so we teach hope. So I created the first kind of evidence-based program for young kids that teaches them hope as a skill. We have a new teen program that's a peer-to-peer program where teens teach each other. We have a Hopeful Cities playbook. So we just launched Las Vegas on how to activate hope throughout a community. It's a public health campaign. We're planting sunflower gardens. We're teaching the kids. We have a My Hope Story template. So the goal is to get everyone learning how to write their own hope story. Because the reality is we all have challenges in life and many challenges. We all have so many hope stories. We have hope stories from our past and maybe hope stories we're going to have to navigate in our future. But it's about learning how to use this SHINE framework to write that hope story so that we make it through in the healthiest way possible. Hope is a protective factor for anxiety and depression. So the more you can practice these hope skills, the more you can get better at hope, the less likely you are to develop a clinical anxiety or depression disorder. And we develop these when we go through significant challenges in life. So when you look at COVID, unless you were really diligent about your hope skills, you may have developed clinical anxiety and depression. So the goal is to equip all populations with the knowledge that you can measure hope, because I never knew that. And, I was doing a lot of global work at the time, and that you can practice skills to become more hopeful at any age, really. So that's the goal, is to then activate these communities with programming around teaching them how to hope.
So I encourage anyone that's listening to use the tools that are on the website that will, continue to make sure we link to everything, because on that journey, this is what it's about, right? We're here.
Yeah.
I think it would be interesting for us to also talk a little bit about International Day of Hope.
Yeah.
And what we did last year and what we're hoping to continue, since this is a special episode around that. I haven't forgotten about N and E, which we'll get to. But it's more fun to weave the wander and how it goes this way.
Right, yes.
Yeah, tell us. Yeah. Okay, so International Day of Hope. Last year we did something pretty cool.
Yes.
And we're continuing that journey towards making it something official. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And, as I mentioned, I'm a representative at the UN for the World Federation for Mental Health. I spoke at the UN several years ago. It was 2015, advocating for getting mental health included in the Sustainable Development Goals. So depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide. A lot of people don't even realize that. You don't think about depression maybe as a disability, because when you think disability, you think about physical disabilities, which is why it was amazing when Walmart had me here talking about depression as a disability, sharing this, at the UN for International Day of Persons with Disabilities. I was able to share my story and depression overall, and the impact. I mean, it's your greatest cost of the workplace, depression is. So it's about, the International Day of Hope is about really teaching the world that hope is measurable and there are skills that you can proactively practice to become more hopeful. So we wrote a paper on hope in the SDGs and how hope relates to our ability to achieve goals. And the United Nations has what's called Sustainable Development Goals. And so we want a specific day a year that we focus on hope science, and we focus on sharing stories and science and strategies around hope. So yeah, we did an incredible event this past year. And why don't you share a little bit more about what we did? It was pretty cool.
Yes. So, what was really fun for me was to kind of co-create with you how we can continue to. So in my role, I know so many amazing emerging leaders and leaders actually across all diverse communities, because I work with the Native American population, I work with the disability population, AAPI. I work with pretty much every population because in the emerging gen communities, it's everyone, right? So it was really fun for us to co-create this event, which also all of those testimonies are available online.
Yep.
So I encourage you all to watch them. And we invited leaders in the disability community, in the Hispanic especially, to share their hope stories and their journeys. And it was just this amazing room full of just such a spectrum of perspectives, of age groups. And it was really cool for me to witness how just in the listening and exchanging, there was so much deeper empathy and how much hope that created.
I know.
And,
yeah.
Now we're a year later. So we did that event and we ended up having, some mixers and moments after that. And again, I encourage everybody to go and watch some of those testimonies because they were super powerful. And just for myself in my role at Walmart, I always think about how we have these amazing partnerships and relationships. And my role is that we want to be part of the community and we want to build trust and continue to be the trusted partner and find ways to do that. Yeah. So that's why it was so awesome to take my partner and find more ways to amplify their voices.
Yeah.
And we're doing that here today too. And I am excited that after that, over the last year, I've seen that, many of those leaders, have shown up on the podcast and you've done different various speaking engagements with and are plugged in. And while we may not have a physical event this year, again, because it's the journey, right? So it's not about okay, we have to do this every single year, but it's about how are we continuing to share this information and, and stay in that network of connections and let those sparks continue to fly.
Yeah, it was awesome. So I got to bring together the scientists, and then we had so many people that shared stories and their personal stories and journey towards hope. So the goal with the International Day of Hope is to get something established at the UN, and I was just there speaking a few weeks ago. We're working on a resolution. It takes a bit of negotiation and talking between countries. You don't just get a resolution passed easily. So we've been.
Is there anything people that are watching can do to support?
Yeah, we'll go to International Day of Hope and definitely check out why. Check out the videos, share the videos if you want on why an International Day of Hope. If you know ambassadors and countries that want to support our resolution, we're making some progress. So I can't really disclose much, but yeah, we're gaining momentum in that. I've met with several ambassadors that are supportive, and when I spoke a few weeks ago at a children's mental health event, a number of people came up after and said, "We love this. This is so needed right now." At a time when around the world hopelessness feels so high and there are so many challenges, to me it's more important than ever that we learn how to manage these challenges in healthy ways so that we don't fall into our pits of despair. It's easy to just not want to get out of bed in times like, when everything, and yet it's so important that we engage and we become part of the solution.
So I still haven't gotten to the N and the E in SHINE. So you guys are listening and following.
Right.
And I feel like what you're talking about a little bit goes to N, right?
Yeah.
Which is the nourishing networks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to how do we create nourishing networks and also nourish them?
Yeah, I mean, it takes intentional practice. And, You know, when I was growing up, it was how many friends do you have? And social media, it's a lot about how many people do you know and how many likes do you, and that's not a nourishing network. Nourishing networks fill you. I mean, kindness, compassion, love, gratitude, all of these things are things that you put into your nourishing networks. But it's super important to really even start to become aware, are the people you're surrounding yourself lifting you up, or are they taking you down? Are they keeping you in your bad habits? Are they reinforcing negativity in your life? Or, are they really supporting you or not? And it's important to become aware of it and then become intentional about who you surround yourself with so that they are healthy people that uplift you. And
this word is very important, intentional.
Yeah,
I'm trying my best to be intentional about everything I do in my life.
Absolutely.
And I encourage everybody to try and think about how we can do that.
Yeah. And when you think about goals too, and what you hope for, so potentially a goal, are you writing it down and then checking in with someone regularly? That's an important part of that. And that's where the nourishing network comes in. Is that person supportive and encouraging of your goal and of what you want in life? Or are they taking you further away from it? And so, yeah, it's really important that you become aware and create those strong relationships. And if you don't have any relationships, know that it's a skill that you can learn. We have a college course where we actually teach the college students. We have experts and then recent college graduates. And they teach in that course, how do I create friends? Like, I'm an introvert, I'm going to college. How do I create that connection? Because it's not something we're all naturally skilled at, so it can take some work. I just found out from a friend recently that Bumble has an option. It's an app. It's like a dating app. Yeah. And it has a friend. You can actually make friends.
Yes, and I know people who have met on Bumble BFF.
Absolutely, Bumble BFF. Give a little plug. But I mean, we've got to practice these skills, and we're not necessarily great at nursing. But, one of the things that's particularly concerning with kids that we know is 50% of our kids in the U.S. don't have one trusted adult, someone they can go and talk to in times of need. And that is critical to hope and to really all outcomes in life. So if, working with kids and being trusted, that trusted adult for kids is also super important.
Okay, and then let's talk about the E. And then I have a couple last questions, and then we'll wrap up. I have no sense of time and how long we've been talking, but it's great conversation.
I know. I always love, chatting with you. So E is eliminating challenges. And these are those negative thought patterns that get in the way of our ability to hope. So if we do things like ruminate, so we think about something in the past over and over and over in our mind, or we worry about the future a lot. I think 95% of the things we worry about never happen. Which is just...
Where are my warriors at?
I know. One of the easiest and best ways to get out of the rumination and worry cycle are to smell flowers to engage your senses. So drink, savor some tea.
Smells really good.
Yeah. But touch something, that's why there's tapping now. But those are great methods. Internalizing failure, this is a big challenge, especially with young kids, or if you have a breakup, internalizing failure. You think of yourself as a failure. Really, when something happens, it's the process that failed. So if you can learn to identify with your failure and start deconstructing that process, where did my process fail? How can I do something differently? Attaching to outcomes is huge. Of course, we're hopeless if we are attaching to outcomes because we can't.
No attachments.
I know. It's hard. It's hard. Like, how do you love but not be attached to, and how do you set a goal but not be attached to that? I mean, when you think about athletes that have these goals, if they're attached to achieving this thing and then they don't achieve it, of course that leads to persistent hopelessness. So how do we manage? How do we become healthier around that and release? So controlling the controllables is another big one. We try to control things that are outside of our control.
I know. And one of my mentors always like, focus on what you can control. And that can be hard because there's so many other things that I'm like, I can see all of these things.
I know.
So I try my best to do that.
Yeah. And so it's about learning the skills to do this. And that's what we mean by Shine Hope. We're not taught these skills. In our college course, we did research, and in the course itself, these students are saying they're learning so much of this for for the first time. And these are skills that are so critical to life and to everything we want.
So, okay, I got this globe here because you guys may know, but I'm Zoya the Explorer. And
Yes.
something that's really cool to me is that, well, obviously Walmart's a global company, but I know you're doing some really amazing work globally as well. You know, so this is not just a US base or just in college or just in cities.
I know.
And sometimes when you've told me some of these stories, I've been so moved by it. So, you know, any kind of fun stories you can share with us with some of the international work you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with hope, and I became obsessed because when I initially was researching, like for the single consistent predictor of suicide, I thought it would be 20 things, you know, and would be really hard to solve. But when it comes down to one thing, being hopelessness, I became obsessed with figuring out, you know, what is hopelessness and how do you get to hope? And can it translate across cultures? Can we create something that's universal, that we can use universally? Because I want everyone in the world to be hopeful. I want all our kids to learn these skills. You know, if we teach our kids young, it just becomes a part of who they are. They between 7 and 11, even before 6, which we're working on programming for that, but it's so important. And so I've studied hope all over the world and done focus groups and with these young kids, and these young kids have taught me so much about hope, you know. Northern Ireland, I remember was a young student I met there, and he said, you know, it's not just me knowing about my upstairs and downstairs brain, but now it's noticing when my brother is in his upstairs or downstairs brain.
Tell us what upstairs and downstairs brain is.
So downstairs brain is that stress response. So when you're in your downstairs brain, you can't think clearly or problem solve. When you're in your upstairs brain, that's when you're problem solving, you're thinking clearly, collaborating, all of that. So you want to get upstairs. So you use your stress skills to manage the downstairs brain, happiness habits to stay in that upstairs brain. And so when you notice someone in their downstairs brain, they're upset, they're angry, you notice someone in the store in their downstairs brain or on an airplane, they're not going to be able to think clearly or communicate well. So rationalizing with them at that point isn't effective. What's effective is getting those, you know, that cycling of those chemicals through their body, those stress hormones. So this little boy said, you know, I noticed when my brother was in his downstairs brain. So I got in the car, and in the past, he just would have, you know, gotten in it with his brother, big blowout. They would have had this, you know, they wouldn't be speaking the next day. And he said, instead, I noticed he was in his downstairs brain. So just backed up, and I didn't say anything. We went home. I took a shower, woke up the next morning, and he didn't even remember it. And he was like, that one moment was so transformative for him because it's going to change his relationship with his brother, you know, and his wisdom around not just knowing my downstairs brain, but knowing someone else's. And when they're in their downstairs brain, what's the best thing I could do to support them in that time and to not further escalate the situation?
That's really amazing insight, because I was thinking about that also for, you know, so like how in the Nourishing Networks piece, like how we're supporting each other on the hope journeys, but also like managing these different things and recognizing others. So that's a very good example, because sometimes it can be so easy to get like affected by that energy and then fall into it
Suck
as well.
Right in.
And then it becomes like, wait, where are we even? And what are we talking about? This is, you know, however that can escalate. And it's so interesting how that can really take over. So that awareness or that conscious moment, I hope that we can all take those 90 seconds and really get to that, right?
I know. Yeah, I mean, the 90 seconds alone, to me, like if we could teach everyone about that and how to manage those 90 seconds in healthier ways, I think so much of our problems happen in that space and time between stimulus and response.
Okay, so at least if there's one thing I'm taking away from here, I'm going to try and start practicing that, because in a world where we're moving very fast, taking 90 seconds can be tough sometimes, but we should take 90 seconds for ourselves every so often.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's been so great to chat with you and really been wonderful to build this partnership. We've started working with Shine Hope and Walmart for the last about year and a half, and we're continuing to think about how we can bring it into diverse communities and activate, as well as continue to amplify the mission. and just appreciate your partnership and your thoughtfulness and how the breadth of the hope journey can benefit so many of us. So, my hope is that we can just continue to create those sparks, continue to shine. And is there anything that we want to talk about that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. Just I'm super grateful for all the work you're doing. I mean, it's these populations that you work with are so important. There's so many challenges, and mental health stigma is so high, especially in populations that are highly oppressed or discriminated against. And so hope is a different framework. It's a different framework for mental health and really looking at the challenges, and yet it's so important. And hope can seem very far away for some of these populations. So starting small and learning how to practice these skills. And I mean, I just think about our kids, and our kids are struggling so much. And yet if we can take all of the energy of their anger and sadness and pain and teach them how to translate that into collective action and change for the world, it's so powerful. I mean, such a powerful generation. And that's my hope and what I'm working hard to try to support our youth in doing to make.
So then, okay, here's to, as we wrap up,
Yes.
here over our chai moment, and for the listeners, and, on International Day of Hope, like I mentioned, AAPI Heritage Month, there's so many different moments to celebrate and honor how we're continuing to build collective action around building peace, right? We talked about peace, and so much of it is what I'm learning, as well as goes inside out, right? So how we build that inside of us through these shine networks and things, the framework, as well as reverberate that into our communities and beyond that. May we continue to build partnerships that can elevate that. May we continue to find ways to amplify and be in our upstairs brains in healthy ways and shine and do all of it. And continue to bring cultural moments where people like myself, like to be able to share chai with you. It's a really wonderful moment of feeling seen and at Walmart and being and creating something together that increases my hope too, right? So that's also what it's about, knowing that our world is it is something that's unifying. It can be transcend, right? But it also, the unifying happens from how we build deeper empathy and how we're able to share parts of ourselves safely. So to be able to share tea with you in a beautiful way and have some conversation, learn a bit. May we take some of these tidbits and learn that, apply them. As I mentioned, you have so many amazing resources and things. So for anyone listening, please activate those resources. And, at Walmart, we care so much about health and wellness and overall wellness for our communities. And, we look forward to continuing to be on that journey with you.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And I'll just end with a toast. My favorite quote by Sam Walton is "Lose your smile, lose your customer." And I just think that's so cool. And the little smiley cup that Zoya brought.
I have a smiley lanyard and a smiley cup with sunflowers in it. So here's to never losing our smiles.
That's right. Keep shining. Keep shining. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for joining in to that Hope Matrix discussion and chai chat with Miss Zoya. I do hope that you enjoyed it, learned maybe a few things. And if you did, please be sure to share this with others. Help us spread the word around hope. That, again, hope is measurable and teachable. And to become more hopeful, we have to practice these skills in our lives. Perhaps by this time next year, we will actually have a resolution passed at the UN and be able to globally celebrate an International Day of Hope, so that all around the world on one single day celebrate, practice, tell stories, share strategies, come together around the single concept of hope. And of course, I've got to add that this program is designed to assist you in learning about hope. It should not be used for medical advice, counseling, or other health-related services. I, Fred, the Shine Hope Company, and myself, Kathryn Goetkze, do not endorse or provide any medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. I am not a medical doctor. The information provided here should not be used for the diagnosis or treatment of any medical condition, and cannot be substituted for the advice of physicians, licensed professionals, or therapists who are familiar with your specific situation. Consult a licensed medical profession or call 911 if you are in need of immediate assistance. And be sure to know the crisis hotline, 988, if you are in need of support. Thanks a bunch for listening. Take good care of yourself and keep shining hope.